Hello everybody, my name is Brandon. Welcome back to Cinefessions, where we talk all things media. So today I am back with another movie review, and this one is interesting to say the least. So have you guys ever had that experience of looking at a piece of marketing and thinking to yourself, wow, these people were putting together this marketing specifically for me to get my money? Well, that's exactly what happened with today's movie. So I'm going to be talking about Saltwater, the battle for Ramree Island, which was just released a couple weeks ago in the month of June 2021. So this is one of those random brand new releases that you see at Walmart when you're walking through looking for those major titles. You turn the corner and there they are, all these random $10 DVDs that you see. And you think to yourself, how do these get made? Like, who's putting these things out? And then 2 years later, you usually see them at the Dollar Tree for down to $1, which is, you know, the best time to buy them, typically speaking. But this one really caught my attention. So let's take a look at why that is. Look at the cover here. So let's start at the very top. Inspired by actual events. So taking that alone, if you guys have been following the channel, you know that I am a big true crime junkie. And so looking at this, it looks like it could be like survival related or disaster related in some sort. So I love things like that. I love reading about events like that, true events. So that alone was the first thing that caught my attention. But then let's jump down to the second spot here. We have Jaws meets Dog Soldiers. So obviously, Jaws. I'm a human being with a pulse. Of course, I love Jaws. But then it talks about Dog Soldiers, which to me, Dog Soldiers holds a special place in my heart because it was one of the first movies that I watched. I randomly found it on DVD one day. I picked it up around when it was close to when it was released. And so I'd never heard anything of it. No idea why I grabbed it, but I loved it. It's one of my favorite werewolf movies out there. Director Neil Marshall has become one of my favorites. He's, of course, gone on to do much bigger things, including Hellboy, directed Game of Thrones episodes. So he's a much bigger name now than he was then, but I love Dog Soldiers. So inspired by actual events, Jaws meets Dog Soldiers, and look at that cover. Whoever designed this cover deserves an A+ because they did a fantastic job. This also helped me make my decision to pick this one up. The tagline here is, they were ready for war, but they weren't ready for this. You have this giant crocodile here that's stalking these soldiers. Like, this just looked like something I had to buy. So that's what I did. My buddy actually sent me a picture of this when he was at the store that day, and I said, well, I guess I know what I'm buying now. So I went to Walmart later that night. They had it in stock, so of course I had to pick it up. So was Saltwater worth my $10? Well, let me start by saying that I wasn't even going to review this movie, but I put up my my short review on Letterboxd, and then I got a comment saying this movie got my $10 too, and that made me kind of reevaluate this and decided, yes, I should do a review on this, because when you think about it, even though this is an independent film made on a low budget, it's still a movie that is being charged $10 for. So if you have a budget each week and you're walking into the store trying to figure out what to buy, you have this as an option, or you have whatever the newest release is, you know, Godzilla on 4K, Speed on 4K, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You have these other options that you can spend that $10 on. So I want you guys to be educated on this film, at least with my experience of it, before you decide to take the plunge. So with that in mind, guys, let's not waste any more time at all. Let's dive right into my review of Saltwater, the battle for Ramree Island. Saltwater is actually a period piece. This takes place during like the last months of World War II. We are following Allied soldiers. It's actually like the British Army, or British soldiers, I guess. And they have one soldier from India with them as well. And they are on a mission. So the leader of the group knows what's going on. They are trying to get intelligence to kind of take over Ramree Island from the Japanese. And so the rest of the crew, though, is just kind of along for the ride. They don't really know what they're doing at the start of this here. Eventually, of course, they figure out what's happening, and basically they are trying to take back this island that has been taken from them. So along the way, though, they run into the swamplands of Ramree Island. So they're traveling around the outskirts of the island for the majority of the film, or probably the first half of the film. But then something happens, and they decide that the best way to do this is to go through the as the crow flies, they say. And so they decide they need to go straight through the swamplands. The Indian civilian soldier that is kind of like the most intelligent one out of the bunch. He's incredibly observant and just is kind of getting an idea of what's going on before everybody else does. He says, hey, like, hold up a minute. There's a reason that we do the outer rim as opposed to going through the middle. And it's because of the swamplands and the crazy wildlife that is rumored to live within. And of course, they are talking about these crocodiles. So they decide to go on, and then obviously the crocodiles start attacking, picking off the crew one by one. So now kind of where the film picks up is, how are they going to survive this crocodile attack, and how are they going to take back Ramree Island? So that is the synopsis here, kind of in a quick way. And this is based on the real battle for Ramree Island. It was rumored that there were these crocodiles that took out over like 1,000 soldiers. But I guess, according to what I was reading, I guess it's been proven to not be true, but the legend lives on, as those things typically do, because it's a lot more fun to think that, not fun for them, of course, but fun for history to think that crocodiles attacked them rather than them dying by kind of, just standard war practices. So that's what we're dealing with here. And again, that sounds like something I should really enjoy. Unfortunately, Saltwater kind of takes the worst parts of Dog Soldiers, where it's the first half of Dog Soldiers, where it's just soldiers talking a lot, and it doesn't really deliver like the second half of Dog Soldiers does, with that payoff of those werewolves, and in this case, the payoff with the crocodiles. Saltwater is a low-budget film. So according to IMDb, which take it with a grain of salt because it is IMDb, but on there it is estimated that the budget was $1 million, which to you and me, that sounds like a lot of money, but if you know anything about filmmaking, you know that $1 million is virtually nothing. And so they did make this on a small budget. So keeping that in mind, and I did try to keep that in mind, this is an independent film. The director, Steve Lawson, has kind of made a living doing independent filmmaking. Like, I think one of his films was Killersaurus, about a giant like T-Rex that goes around killing people. He did Aura, A-U-R-A, which I found at the Dollar Tree recently here. So he's made a living doing movies like this. So keeping that in mind, honestly, I was still disappointed with what was delivered here. Let's talk about the look of this movie overall. So there is this like greenish, yellowish tint that is put over this film that just makes it feel like an indie film. And they do this, I think, to try to cover up some of the imperfections of the film. And they also stick so closely to these very tight shots. You're going to see a lot of talking heads throughout this film. There's not a lot of overhead shots. What they do have are, very clearly like stock footage shots. At least that's what they appeared to be. There is not a lot of the jungle. You don't see a lot of this island that these people are walking through. The crocodiles, when you get the attacks, you see like the head of the crocodile, and that's about it. The special effects are just not there. There is a lot of stock footage of other crocodiles kind of swimming through swamplands, but it just doesn't mesh together to make it feel like you are watching crocodiles actually near these actors, which I'm sure they weren't. And so that part, just the tension was lost because of that. So that was a little bit disappointing. Going back to that greenish or yellowish tint that is kind of prevalent throughout this entire film, it makes it feel like you're watching something that's cheap. And that's not the feeling you want to have. I don't care if I'm watching an indie film. I don't want to kind of be distracted by the fact that I'm watching something super cheap like that. I want to be engrossed with the characters, the setting, the dialogue, whatever the case may be. That script needs to suck me in, so I forget that I'm watching a low budget film, and that just never happens here. I am 100% aware that I'm watching a cheaply made movie, which, sometimes you can look past that if those other elements are there, but here they aren't. The character motivations here are about as surface level as you can get. Our main character, played by Glenn Salvage, he does a decent job with the acting, but his character doesn't go anywhere throughout this entire film. He is angry at the beginning, he's angry at the middle, and he's angry at the end. He might be angry at different things throughout the film, but for the most part, he's just a mad person, and that never develops in the least. And then his motivations for being a soldier to begin with are just kind of as basic, stereotypical as you can get for something like this. So while I guess, yes, it works because it makes sense, it's just, there feels like very little creativity when it comes to the character backstories in this. His co-star, Joss Steven Singh, I think does a pretty nice job throughout this as well. But again, like we get virtually nothing about his backstory. He volunteered to be there, and that's pretty much all we get. At least all that I picked up on throughout this story. So just the characters are so cardboard cutout cliche. Their motivations are lacking, and they don't grow throughout this film, which is pretty disappointing. Now, all of that said, if the payoff here, if the climax was worth it, then I could forgive all of those things. If it does have that, or if it did have that dog soldier turn toward the end of the film, I would have forgiven this and I would have probably had a good time with it. Unfortunately, 90% of this like 87 or 85 minute runtime is just talking heads. Two people talking to each other, and again, in close proximity because they don't have a big budget, so they didn't have a, this large filming landscape that they could use, I'm sure. And so you get a lot of like two shots. And so because of that, it just never pays itself off. The end of this is really anticlimactic. There is gunshots in this, which just sound so fake. Obviously, there's, not even, it's all special effects done after, like in After Effects or whatever, of the bullets coming out and these crocodiles being shot, things like that. It's just, it has no payoff. So this build is not worth it at all. In general, I love watching independent films, but when an independent film works is when it makes me forget that I'm watching a film made on a shoestring budget. It makes me forget that these people were running, by the seat of their pants, whatever the case is. But unfortunately, Saltwater never lets me forget that this has a small budget. Between the indie standard color grading that's going on here, and then the cheap special effects that do nothing to enhance the film, the script, which is not worth watching at all, and then the characters that have no build to them whatsoever, Saltwater is just not a movie that was worth my $10. And more importantly, forget the $10. It was a movie that was not worth my, whatever it is, 87 minutes that I committed to it. Saltwater simply wasn't worth it. So unfortunately, I have to give Saltwater The Battle for Ramree Island 1 out of 5 stars. All right, so hopefully this review educates you a little bit to make a more informed decision when you're looking through those random $10 Walmart DVDs next week. But let me know down in the comments below, because this was only my experience with the film. Have you guys seen this one? And if so, did you like it any more than I did? Because unfortunately, it was just not for me. So I understand that Steve Lawson is trying to do the impossible, making a film that's worth watching on a shoestring budget. And unfortunately, this one didn't do it for me, but I'm definitely willing to give him another shot. Like I said, I have another one from his filmography in my collection already, so I definitely want to watch that one just to see if that one grabs me a little bit more than Saltwater did. So let me know what your thoughts were on this movie down in the comments below. Is this one you still plan to pick up, or is it one that you now want to avoid? Let me know down there. I love having more of a conversation with you guys down in those comments, so thanks for all that support. As always, if you guys did enjoy this video, please give it a like down below and consider subscribing to Cinefessions here on YouTube. I don't just talk movies, I talk all things media, be it books, movies, graphic novels, collectibles. If it's media related, I'm interested in it, and if you are too, you might consider subscribing. All right, guys, so that is going to do it for today. I just want to say thank you all so much for watching, and I want to encourage you to consume some media today. I'll catch you next time.